On my birthday, I got a text from Dad. Sold your gaming PC for your sister's new iPhone. She deserves better than her old one. Stop being selfish. You're lucky we let a burden like you live here for free. Also, you're paying her 6,000 tuition tomorrow or you're out. When I refused, he kicked me out. So I left them a plot twist on the table that changed everything. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Throwaway account for obvious reasons. This happened about 6 months ago, and I'm still processing it all, but people keep telling me I need to share this story. Fair warning, this is long as hell, but stick with me because it gets wild. So anyway, I turned 19 last week. No party, no cake, nothing special. Just another day in the house where I'm basically the family's personal cash machine and unpaid servant. But this birthday? This one changed everything. I woke up to a text from my dad. Not happy birthday or anything normal. Nope. First thing I read was, sold your gaming PC. Your sister needs a new phone. Be grateful we still feed you. Like, what the actual freak? I'm lying there in bed, staring at my phone screen, and I swear my brain just stopped working for a minute. That gaming PC wasn't some impulse purchase. It was a custom build I'd been working on for almost 2 years. Started with a basic case and motherboard when I was 17, then slowly upgraded piece by piece as I could afford it. Graphics card here, more RAM there, better processor when I got a decent bonus at work. It wasn't just about gaming either. I used that thing for everything. School projects, 3D modeling for my engineering classes, streaming when I had time to make a few extra bucks, and yeah, unwinding with games after spending all day helping my family with literally everything they couldn't be bothered to do themselves. The specs were beautiful too. RTX 3080, 16 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM, Ryzen 7 processor, custom water cooling loop that I'd spent weeks perfecting. I'd researched every component for months before buying, saved up for each upgrade, installed everything myself while watching YouTube tutorials until 2 a.m. That PC was more than just a computer. It was proof that I could build something amazing with my own hands and my own money. Gone. Just like that. But wait, it gets worse. About 10 minutes later, another text. Also, you'll pay Emma's tuition. $6,000 by Friday. Emma's my 17-year-old sister, and she's always been the golden child. Never had to work for anything in her life. Never had to clean her own room, do her own laundry. Hell, I don't think she's ever even made her own lunch. That's always been my job. See, here's what nobody talks about when they hear these stories. I wasn't just the family ATM. I was the family everything. Cook, cleaner, chauffeur, tech support, homework helper, errand runner, personal assistant, and apparently now, Emma's personal college fund. Mom works part-time at a dentist's office doing filing and appointment scheduling, but she's always too tired when she gets home to deal with housework. Claims her back hurts from sitting all day, which is funny because my back hurts from working a physical warehouse job, but somehow I'm still expected to come home and cook dinner for everyone. Dad's got this middle management job at a manufacturing plant, quality control supervisor or something like that. Works decent hours, gets home by 5:30 most days, but acts like he's running a Fortune 500 company the way he comes home and demands dinner be ready, his clothes laid out for tomorrow, and complete silence while he watches the news. So guess who's been doing most of the cooking since I was 14? Every grocery run because you know what we need better than anyone, and you're already out anyway. Every load of laundry because you do it better, and it's more efficient if one person handles it. Every weekend for the past 2 years, driving Emma to dance practice, tutoring sessions, friends' houses, the mall, wherever she needed to go because mom didn't want to deal with traffic and dad worked hard all week. Me, always me. And I did it because, I don't know, I thought that's what family did. Thought if I just helped enough, contributed enough, proved my worth enough, maybe they'd actually appreciate me instead of treating me like hired help they didn't have to pay. I've been working since I was legally allowed to. Started at the local grocery store bagging groceries and gathering shopping carts. Minimum wage, but it was something. Then moved to this warehouse job that paid better. $17 an hour, which isn't amazing, but decent for someone my age. Night shifts, weekend shifts, whatever they had available. Forklift operation, inventory management, loading trucks. Hard work, but honest work. Every spare dollar went into either that PC build or this secret savings account I'd been growing since I was 16. Not because I was planning anything crazy back then. I just learned early that having money meant not having to ask permission for basic stuff. Want new clothes? Better have your own cash. Need school supplies? Hope you've been saving. Want to go somewhere with friends? Better be able to pay for gas and your share of everything. I texted back one word: no. His response came fast. Then get out. You're cut off. And that's when something just clicked, like a switch flipped in my brain. I wasn't angry exactly. More like this cold, calm feeling washed over me. Because here's the thing nobody in my family bothered to figure out. I'd been planning my exit strategy for months. Not because I wanted to leave, but because I'd started to realize that no matter how much I did for them, it was never going to be enough. There would always be another expense I needed to cover, another chore that was somehow my responsibility, another sacrifice I needed to make for the good of the family. See, my parents think they know me. Quiet Danny, the helper, the one who doesn't make waves, the kid who just takes whatever they dish out, cooks their meals, cleans their messes, and keeps his mouth shut. They figured as long as they kept me fed and housed, I owed them everything. What they didn't know was that I'd been documenting every single thing for the past year and a half. Every time Dad borrowed money from my wallet and never paid it back, $20 here, $40 there, always with promises to get you back next payday that never materialized. Every time Mom made me cover groceries because family helps family, but somehow that help only flowed one direction. Every time they changed my work schedule without asking me first, because Emma had some event she needed to get to, and I was expected to drop everything and drive her. Every time they took credit for something I'd paid for or accomplished. Like when Dad told his work buddies that he'd built my gaming PC for me as a birthday present, conveniently forgetting that every component came from my paychecks. Or when Mom bragged to her sister about how we were paying for Emma's SAT prep classes, conveniently forgetting that the $800 for those classes came directly out of my savings account. I had it all written down, dated, with photos when I could manage it, screenshots of text conversations, pictures of receipts, even audio recordings of some of the more ridiculous family meetings where they'd assign me new responsibilities without asking if I had time or interest. But the big secret? The one that was about to blow their minds? I'd filed for legal emancipation 6 months ago. Yeah, you read that right. 6 months. And they never even noticed. It wasn't hard, honestly. I'd been basically supporting myself anyway, so I had all the documentation I needed. The judge looked at my bank statements showing consistent income from my job, my work history, the fact that I was paying for my own car insurance and gas, the buying of my own clothes, groceries for the family half the time, even covering utility bills when Mom claimed they were a little short this month. The family court judge was this older woman who'd clearly seen this situation before. She looked through my paperwork, asked me a few questions about my living situation and future plans, and basically said, yeah, this kid's already an adult in everything but paperwork. Let's make it official. The whole process took about 3 months from filing to approval. I had to prove I could support myself financially, show that I had a plan for housing and education, demonstrate that emancipation was in my best interest. Easy enough when you've been essentially independent since you were 16. The certificate was sitting in my backpack the whole time, right there in a manila folder with copies of everything else they didn't know about. My scholarship letters showing the full ride they thought was just partial assistance, my private bank account statements showing way more money than they realized I had, documentation of every loan they'd taken from me over the years. So when Dad told me to get out, I just did. No yelling, no dramatic scene. I packed my stuff, which wasn't much, since they'd been borrowing or reallocating most of my things over the years anyway. My clothes, some books, a few personal items. The important stuff was already at Jordan's house, or in a storage unit I'd been renting for 3 months. Factory reset my phone and left it in the kitchen drawer. Changed every password on every account I had. Email, social media, bank accounts, everything. Transferred my car title to a P.O. box I'd set up weeks earlier, but I left something on the kitchen table. Something that was going to make the next morning very, very interesting. I crashed at my friend Jordan's place that night. His parents have always been cool with me. They knew my family situation was weird, even if they didn't know all the details. Jordan's got this spare room in their basement that's basically become my second home over the years. His mom always made sure there was a plate for me at dinner when I came over, and his dad once told me I was welcome anytime I needed space. Looking back, I think they knew something was off about my home life. The way I'd show up sometimes looking exhausted from doing everyone else's chores all weekend. How I never seemed to have any free time because I was always covering for my family's lack of planning. The fact that I'd been essentially parenting Emma for years while my actual parents just didn't. I didn't sleep much that first night. Not because I was upset or anything. Honestly, it felt like this massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. No more walking on eggshells, no more pretending everything was fine, no more being the family's personal ATM and live-in maid, but I kept thinking about that folder on the kitchen table. See, I hadn't just left my emancipation papers, I'd left everything. A complete breakdown of our family's financial reality, from my perspective. Copies of bank statements showing exactly how much money I'd saved up. Close to $12,000, way more than they thought. Letters from the Scholarship Foundation showing my full ride to the local state college, which they assumed was just partial assistance. Receipts for every major purchase I'd made with my own money, including that gaming PC they'd just sold and about $3,000 worth of groceries and household items over the past year. But here's the kicker. I'd also included a detailed log, every date, every family emergency where I'd been expected to contribute money, every time they'd taken something of mine without asking, every promise they'd made and broken, every hour I'd spent doing household work that should have been split among all of us. Like the time I spent my entire spring break deep cleaning the house because mom had invited her book club over and couldn't possibly do it all herself. Scrubbing bathrooms, organizing closets, washing windows, even painting the guest bedroom because it looked dingy. Or when I used my Saturday off to drive Emma to a college fair 3 hours away because dad had to work. Found out later he was actually playing golf with his buddies. The dozens of evenings I'd spent tutoring Emma in math and science because my parents couldn't be bothered to help with homework, but still expected her to maintain her grades for her scholarship applications. The countless weekend mornings I'd gotten up early to make breakfast for everyone before heading to work, only to come home and find dirty dishes still in the sink because we figured you'd want to do them since you're better at it. I wanted them to see it all laid out. Wanted them to understand exactly how much they'd been taking from someone they saw as just a broke teenager, but who was actually keeping their household running while building his own future. The gaming PC sale was just the final straw, but the folder showed them it was part of a years-long pattern of treating me like property instead of family. Jordan woke me up around 8 a.m. with coffee and this weird smile on his face. "Dude," he said, "your phone has been blowing up all morning." My phone? Oh, right, the old one I'd left behind. Apparently, they'd figured out my passcode. It was Emma's birthday, because of course it was, and had been trying to call and text me all night. "They find the folder yet?" I asked. "Oh, they found it. My sister texted me around 6 a.m. Apparently, Emma was screaming loud enough to wake up half the neighborhood. According to Jordan's little sister, who goes to the same school as Emma, my sister had a complete meltdown that morning. Tore through the house looking for me, screaming that I'd ruined everything and destroyed the family. Started throwing things, slamming doors. The whole dramatic teenager routine cranked up to 11. Mom started crying. Dad started making phone calls. But it was when Mom actually sat down and read through the folder that things really went sideways. See, they'd always assumed I was barely getting by, that I needed them more than they needed me. The scholarship they knew about was small, or so they thought. My job was just part-time minimum wage, as far as they knew. I was just some broke teenager who should be grateful for a roof over my head and the privilege of doing their housework. The folder showed them exactly how wrong they were. Turns out I'd been making decent money at the warehouse. Not great, but definitely enough to live on independently. $17 an hour, plus overtime on weekends, plus occasional bonuses for perfect attendance. The scholarship wasn't partial. It was a full ride plus a living stipend. And that small savings account they occasionally made jokes about? Yeah, it had enough to cover my first 2 years of college expenses with room to spare. But here's what really got them. The financial breakdown showed that over the past 2 years, I'd essentially subsidized their lifestyle to the tune of almost $8,000. Borrowed money that never got paid back, family contributions that only went one way, groceries and household items I'd bought when they claimed to be a little short, repairs I'd paid for on the family car when Dad said he'd handle it later. Jordan's sister said Emma was crying in the hallway before first period, telling anyone who'd listen that her brother had abandoned the family and now she couldn't go to college because he was supposed to help pay for it. Made it sound like I'd signed some contract to fund her education, instead of just being the family member they decided to squeeze for money, which was bullshit, by the way. Mom and Dad had college funds for both of us. They just figured it was easier to make me pay for Emma's current expenses and save their money for whatever. A new car for Dad, probably. Or that kitchen renovation Mom kept talking about. Or maybe just keeping it as a safety net while they spent my money instead of their own. The really messed up part? I'd been completely willing to help with Emma's college costs. If they'd asked nicely, if they'd included me in the family financial planning, if they'd treated me like a family member instead of an employee, I probably would have contributed something reasonable. But demanding $6,000 by Friday after selling my stuff without permission, while treating me like hired help for years? Yeah, that was never going to fly. By noon, Dad was calling my school trying to get access to my financial aid information. Told them he was concerned about his son's well-being and needed to verify where his money was going, because there had been irregularities in the family finances. The financial aid office told him to pound sand, because legally, I wasn't his dependent anymore. Hadn't been for 6 months. Then he tried calling my work, claiming there was a family emergency, and he needed to speak with me immediately about a financial crisis that required my immediate attention. My supervisor, who knew I'd been dealing with family drama, took the message and then called me at Jordan's house to let me know. Your dad sounds pretty frantic, she said. Everything okay? He's frantic because his ATM just walked away, I told her. I'm fine. If he calls again, just tell him I don't work there anymore. Which wasn't true. I'd already arranged to transfer to a different shift and location, but he didn't need to know that. This is where things get really good. Over the next week, I started hearing reports from people back home through Jordan's sister and a couple other friends who were still in touch with Emma. Dad had gone to Emma's school trying to fix the situation, told the administration that there had been a family misunderstanding and that Emma's tuition would be paid soon. They just needed a little more time to sort out some banking issues. Problem was, Emma's private school had heard this story before. Too many parents making promises they couldn't keep, then expecting the school to just wait indefinitely for payment while their kid kept attending classes. They gave him a deadline, pay by the following Friday, or Emma gets removed from the roster. Meanwhile, Mom was calling every relative we had, spinning this story about how I'd stolen money from the family and abandoned my responsibilities. She was telling people that I'd been secretly hoarding money while my poor sister couldn't afford school, that I'd brainwashed myself against the family somehow, that I was being selfish and ungrateful after everything they'd done for me. But here's what she didn't count on. I'd already reached out to a few of those relatives myself. My cousin Lisa, who'd always been cool with me, got one of these calls from Mom. But Lisa had also gotten an email from me a few days earlier with some context. Nothing dramatic, just a simple explanation of what had actually happened, with screenshots of some of the more ridiculous text exchanges and a few photos of receipts showing who had actually been paying for what around the house. Lisa called Mom back and basically said, "Wait, let me get this straight. You sold his gaming PC without permission, demanded he pay for Emma's tuition, then kicked him out when he said no? And now you're surprised he left? Also, didn't he buy most of your groceries last month?" Apparently, Mom did not take that well. Started screaming about how Lisa didn't understand the situation and how I was manipulating everyone with my lies and fabrications. Lisa, who's got a master's degree in accounting and definitely knows financial manipulation when she sees it, was not impressed. The best part? Dad tried to file a police report claiming I'd stolen family funds when I left. The officer took one look at my emancipation papers, bank statements showing where every dollar had come from, my job, and records showing I'd actually been contributing more money to the household than I'd been taking, and basically laughed him out of the station. Can't steal money from yourself, turns out. Also can't claim someone abandoned their responsibilities when they were legally an adult performing those responsibilities voluntarily. But Dad wasn't done yet. He started calling around to local pawn shops, trying to track down my gaming PC so he could return it to me. Found the place that had bought it for $400. I'd put about $2,200 into that build over 2 years. When he tried to buy it back, they wanted $800. He called the house phone at Jordan's, somehow got the number, probably from Emma stalking my friends on social media, and demanded I accept the computer back and call it even. I told him to mail me a check for the full $2,200 I'd originally invested, plus compensation for all the saved games, custom software configurations, and personal files I'd lost when he sold it without backing anything up first. Oh, and interest for the emotional distress. He hung up on me. But I wasn't done yet. Here's where I probably should have just let it go. They were already scrambling, already facing consequences for their actions. Emma was going to have to transfer to public school, which honestly wasn't the end of the world. Mom and Dad were stressed and fighting constantly. I could have just walked away and lived my life. But then Emma started reaching out to my friends. And that's when I realized they hadn't learned a damn thing. Not me directly. She didn't have my new number. But she was messaging people on social media, trying to get them to guilt me into doing the right thing, crying about how her future was ruined, how I was being selfish, how family is supposed to stick together no matter what. She posted this long Facebook rant about how her heartless brother had stolen money and abandoned the family in their time of need. Made it sound like I'd emptied their bank accounts and left them homeless instead of just refusing to pay her tuition after they sold my stuff. She even tried to get my boss at the warehouse to pressure me, called them up claiming there was a family emergency and that I needed to be contacted immediately about a financial crisis that only I could solve. When that didn't work, she started spreading rumors at school, told people I'd been secretly rich the whole time and had been pretending to struggle while letting my family suffer. Said I was probably on drugs or had gotten involved with bad people who were influencing me against my family. That's when I decided to go nuclear. See, I'd been documenting everything, but I hadn't shared most of it. The folder I left on the table was just the highlights. But I had so much more. Screenshots of text conversations where dad called me worthless and said I'd never amount to anything without family support. Voice recordings of family dinner conversations where they discussed my work schedule and finances like I wasn't even there, planning how to spend my money before I'd even earned it. Photos of my room after they'd gone through my stuff looking for proof that I was hiding money from them. But the real treasure trove was the documentation of how much unpaid labor I'd been doing. Every grocery shopping trip with receipts showing I'd paid. Every time I'd cook dinner for the family with photos of the meals and timestamps. Every weekend spent cleaning or doing yard work while Emma hung out with friends. Every time I'd driven her somewhere, helped her with homework, covered for her when she screwed up. I put together a nice little package and sent it to a few key people. Emma's boyfriend's parents, who'd been helping with some of her school expenses. The family friends who mom had been calling for emergency loans. A couple of relatives who'd been getting the sob story about how I'd abandoned everyone. I didn't add any commentary, didn't need to. I just let the evidence speak for itself. The response was immediate. Emma's boyfriend's parents pulled their financial support and apparently had some very pointed questions about why Emma had never mentioned that her brother had been basically supporting the family. The family friends stopped returning mom's calls. And my uncle Mike, dad's brother, who'd been considering a loan, called dad directly and told him exactly what he thought of parents who'd kick out their kid for refusing to pay their siblings' tuition. That boy's been working his ass off for years, I heard through the grapevine. And you sold his computer? Are you out of your goddamn mind? But the real kicker came when the story started spreading through Emma's school. See, private schools are small communities, and parents talk. When word got out that the family who couldn't afford tuition had been living off their teenage son's income while the daughter never worked a day in her life, well, let's just say Emma's social life took a hit. Suddenly, she wasn't the tragic victim of her heartless brother's abandonment. She was the spoiled princess whose family had been financially abusing their other kid. It's been 6 months now. Emma ended up at the public high school, which is actually a pretty decent school. Better than I expected, honestly. I heard through the grapevine that she had to get a part-time job to help rebuild her college fund, which, yeah, welcome to the real world, sis. Apparently, she's working at the same grocery store where I started, bagging groceries and dealing with difficult customers. The irony is not lost on me. Mom and dad are still together, but apparently they're fighting a lot more now. Turns out when you can't use your kid as a financial band-aid and unpaid housekeeper, you actually have to face your money problems and domestic responsibilities head on. Who knew? They've tried reaching out a few times, usually when they need something, of course. There was a letter last month asking for help with rent. Apparently, their landlord wasn't thrilled about the whole selling your kid's stuff to make ends meet thing when word got around the neighborhood. I scanned it, saved a copy for my records, then threw it away. There was also a voicemail from mom around Thanksgiving, crying about how holidays aren't the same without family and how they just want me to come home. She conveniently forgot to mention that I'd spent the previous 3 Thanksgivings doing all the cooking while everyone else watched football, then cleaning up afterward while they took naps. I spent this Thanksgiving at Jordan's house, eating food I didn't have to cook, and watching football without having to serve anyone or clean up afterward. It was the best holiday I'd had in years. I'm doing fine, by the way. Better than fine, actually. Got my own apartment near campus, small but clean, and completely quiet. No one yelling my name from another room. No surprise chore lists. No family meetings where I get assigned more responsibilities without any additional authority. I'm keeping up with my studies, still working at the warehouse on weekends. They transferred me to a different location where my family can't track me down. My scholarship covers tuition and books. My job covers living expenses. And for the first time in my life, I'm actually saving money instead of having it drained away by family emergencies. Built myself a new gaming PC too, even better than the one they sold. RTX 4080, 32 gigabytes of RAM, custom loop cooling, the works. Spent about $3,000 on it total, but it was worth every penny. When I posted a picture in our old Discord server, someone asked how I could afford it. I just said I'd been saving up, which was true, just not in the way they thought. But here's where the real consequences hit them. About 3 months after I left, Emma's grades started slipping. Turns out, when you don't have your older brother doing half your homework and explaining every concept you don't understand, actually maintaining a 3.8 GPA is pretty difficult. Her new school doesn't have the same grade inflation as the private place, and she's struggling with the increased workload and the fact that she actually has to study instead of just copying my work. Last month, Dad got laid off from his management position. Something about restructuring and eliminating redundant positions. I suspect it had more to do with him calling in favors and making personal calls during work hours to try to fix the family financial crisis. But that's just speculation. Either way, he's been out of work for 6 weeks now and apparently burning through their savings, trying to maintain their lifestyle. And Mom? Mom had to pick up a second job. Turns out when you don't have a live-in cook, cleaner, and errand runner, you actually have to either do that work yourself or pay someone else to do it. Since they can't afford a housekeeper and Dad's too proud to do women's work, Mom's been pulling double shifts at the dental office and coming home to a house that still needs cleaning, laundry that needs washing, and a family that still expects dinner on the table. She's lost about 20 pounds from the stress and looks like she's aged 5 years and 6 months. Meanwhile, I'm living peacefully in my own space, gaming on my new PC, and finally understanding what it feels like to come home to quiet instead of chaos. Update. Holy shit, guys. They actually showed up. I was getting ready for class yesterday morning when I heard someone pounding on my apartment door. Thought it might be my neighbor with a package or something, but when I looked through the peephole, there they were. All three of them. Mom, Dad, and Emma, standing in my hallway looking like they hadn't slept in days. I almost didn't open the door. Almost pretended I wasn't home. But honestly, I was curious. After 6 months of silence, what could possibly be so bad that they'd drive an hour to my college town and track down my address? So I opened the door but left the chain on. Danny, thank God, Mom started immediately, and I could see she'd been crying. We need to talk. Please, just let us in for 5 minutes. We can talk right here, I said. What do you want? Dad stepped forward, and for a second I thought he was going to try to push past me, but he just stood there looking defeated. Son, we made some mistakes. We know that now. But we need your help. I almost laughed. My help? Really? After you sold my PC and kicked me out? We'll buy you a new computer, Emma jumped in. A better one, whatever you want. Dad lost his job and Mom's working 2 jobs, and we might lose the house and… Stop, I said, holding up my hand. Just stop. You drove here to ask me for money? The three of them exchanged glances, and that told me everything I needed to know. Mom tried a different approach. Honey, you're family. We raised you. We fed you. You raised me to be your personal servant, I cut her off. You fed me so I'd have energy to do your chores. Let's not pretend this was about love. Dad's face was getting red. Even desperate, he couldn't hide his anger. We gave you a roof over your head for 18 years. You owe us. I don't owe you shit, I said, and his eyes widened like he'd never heard me swear before. I've been legally emancipated for 8 months. I was never your dependent. I was your employee. And I quit. Emma started crying then. Real tears. Not the crocodile tears she used to pull when she wanted something. Danny, please. I had to drop out of school. I'm working at the grocery store making minimum wage, and Mom's getting sick from the stress, and Dad can't find another job, and we just need… How much? I asked. They perked up immediately, like vultures smelling carrion. Just enough to catch up on the mortgage, Dad said quickly. Maybe 15,000? 20 at most. We'll pay you back, I swear. With interest. I stared at them for a long moment. These people who'd taken everything from me for years, who'd sold my property without permission, who'd kicked me out on my birthday, were standing in my hallway begging for money they'd never be able to repay. No, I said. The silence stretched out. Emma's crying got louder. No, Mom whispered. Number, I'm not giving you a penny. I'm not co-signing a loan. I'm not moving back home to help. I'm not doing anything for any of you ever again. Dad exploded. You selfish little shit. After everything we did for you, this is how you repay us? We should have kicked you out years ago. You should have, I agreed. Would have saved us all a lot of time. I started to close the door, but Mom stuck her foot in the gap. Danny, please. I know we weren't perfect parents, but we tried our best. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive us? To help us just this once? Your best? I shook my head. Mom, your best was making me cook dinner every night while you watch TV. Your best was sending me to work double shifts so Emma could have dance lessons. Your best was selling my computer without permission to buy her a phone she didn't need. We'll make it up to you, she pleaded. How? How exactly would you make up for 2 years of treating me like hired help? How do you make up for stealing $8,000 from your own kid? How do you make up for kicking him out on his birthday? She didn't have an answer for that. Emma tried one last time. What about family? What about loving each other no matter what? I looked at her. Really looked at her. She was thinner than I remembered, and she looked tired. The grocery store job was probably the first real work she'd ever done in her life. Emma, I said quietly, when have any of you ever shown me love without expecting something in return? When have you ever helped me without it benefiting you somehow? When have you ever treated me like family instead of like staff? She opened her mouth, then closed it. That's what I thought, I said. You want to know what family feels like? It feels like Jordan's parents asking how my day was without needing anything from me. It feels like having friends who invite me over just because they enjoy my company. It feels like professors who believe in me because of my work, not because of what I can do for them. I took a deep breath. You want to know what love feels like? It doesn't feel like being woken up on my birthday with demands for money. It doesn't feel like having my stuff sold without permission. It doesn't feel like being told to get out when I finally say no. Dad made one last desperate attempt. Fine. You want an apology? I'm sorry. We're all sorry. We made mistakes. But we're family. And family forgives each other. Family, I repeated. Right. Well, here's the thing about family. It's supposed to go both ways. You don't get to treat someone like garbage for years, and then demand forgiveness when you need something. I looked at each of them one more time. I hope you figure your stuff out. I really do. But you'll figure it out without me. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt. They stood out there for maybe 10 more minutes, talking in increasingly frantic whispers. I heard Dad say something about ungrateful and selfish, which honestly just proved that he still didn't get it. Eventually, they left. I made myself coffee, sat down at my gaming PC, and felt absolutely nothing. No guilt, no regret, no second thoughts. Just relief that it was finally over. They chose their path a long time ago. I'm just choosing mine.